Good morning, I'm Gemma Clark, and this presentation is titled Abstract Art and Synaesthesia, a discussion related to open work. I have chosen the text Open Work by David Crow, pages 165 to 87. The image I have chosen to discuss in relation to the text is Succession by Kandinsky, painted in 1935. I will be looking at how we can apply the concept of openness to expressionist art like this, particularly in terms of evoking a sensual experience beyond what is on the canvas. David Crow originally wrote this text in 2003, but the set text is from the third edition in 2016. The book as a whole tackles several concepts within semiotics and takes a simplifying and clarifying tone to what may otherwise be quite a heavy subject. Crow describes and expands on the ideas presented by Umberto Eco in The Open Work, first published in 1962. Eco is a significant scholar in the field of semiotics, placing, open quote, particular emphasis on the role of the reader as an important part of the creative process, close quote. Eco talks about the relationship between author and reader, where a reader uses their past experience to find meaning in a piece of work. Eco uses the term encyclopedia to suggest the numerous readings that can be taken from one sign, that must be navigated through to find meaning. Openness of work is considered in terms of how much information it has, and Eco used information theory to illustrate this. The theory states that, open quote, the amount of information contained in a message depends on where it originates and its probability, close quote. The text then considers open work in the context of the visual arts. Crow places a focus on abstract and expressionist art, with gestural marks that leave open many possibilities of interpretation by the reader. Crow discusses the concept of underlying intention being the discerning factor between what is art and what is mere randomness. He highlights framing as an example of intention, that is, that any piece of discarded material can become an artifact once it has been framed. Crow finally discusses the pleasure implicit for a reader in decoding and assessing open work. He concludes that openness is pleasure as the reader engages in, open quote, a game of pleasure and surprise, trying to interpret the intentions of the author as they do so, close quote. The image I have chosen to discuss in relation to open work is Succession by Wassily Kandinsky. Kandinsky is generally considered one of the pioneers of abstraction in Western art. He painted this piece soon after moving to France from Germany, where he had taught at the Bauhaus School of Art for over a decade. The painting is oil on canvas. It is 1 meter wide and features several brightly coloured shapes arranged in rows across the canvas, not unlike hieroglyphics. In her book, Symbolist Aesthetics and Early Abstract Art, D. Reynolds describes these shapes as gaily coloured bimorphic forms. D. Reynolds takes particular interest in the place of the imagination in taking readings of open work. She uses artists such as Kandinsky and Mondrian to demonstrate that the imagination may take us to a space with no influence to reality or to real forms. This point is interesting to discuss in relation to Eco's theory of semiotics, where examples of readings are generally associations with real things. For example, when looking at a tree, one may think of wood or a chair. However, of highly abstract art and other similarly open work, Reynolds states that, open quote, the substance of words and of colours and forms itself becomes the starting point for constructing new imaginary spaces, close quote. These new imaginary spaces are precisely what the first abstract expressionists were seeking to explore, to subvert figurative, simply read connotation and create open spaces that the imagination can fill. The shapes in Succession evoke musical symbols, a form which interested Kandinsky and which plays a significant role in the Paris paintings. Reynolds goes on to note that, open quote, this analogy with musical signs introduces a synaesthetic dimension, close quote. This means that figures evocative of music, for example, bass clefs, staves, and notation, may cause us to hear music in our heads. This is a particularly curious side of considering open work, as the experience surpasses readings as visual images and begins to move into other senses, such as hearing. Artists since Kandinsky's time have explored this concept more purposefully and specifically. Shown here are 2 graphical scores. Music scores are usually notated using clearly structured sets of signs detailing how to play the music. Scores for Treatise by Cornelius Cardew and Luminous Axis by Wadada Leo Smith both subvert the conventions of musical notation. They are more open and inspire almost infinite different readings. Various different recordings exist of Treatise, each completely different. In this respect, the score as an artwork has been the source of numerous new items of art, with unlimited potential to inspire further interpretation. This would support the positive view Eco took of open works when he is quoted as saying that openness is pleasure, as it is clear that several artists have taken up Treatise as a source of inspiration. Overall, I have discussed Succession in the light of David Crowe's text, highlighting that it is an example of open work. I conclude my discussion in support of the argument held by Eco that openness in art can challenge, inspire, and create pleasure. Finally, I have referenced graphical scores and D. Reynolds' essays on the role of imagination in open work to create examples and support my argument. After this slide, I will be providing a bibliography, image list, and a transcript of referenced notes. Thank you very much for listening.